finding astrology, even as an adult, kind of put everything in place. It saved me from being lost, empowered me. If I charge money, to me, it's about investing in astrology.
Mm-hmm.
It's about supporting research. It's about making sure there's financial backing to a very important system that helps humanity. And when I am on stage, it's not about me. It's about astrology. Well, Scorpio sun and Cancer rising with the moon in Gemini in the 12th house.
In the 12th house. But for you, how was your personal experience as a Gemini moon in the 12th house? Is it challenging or?
Well, I think that it captures to some extent what I went through. I had to doubt myself first, like, is there something wrong with me? When I was in Israel and in my early studies, I went to an astrologer's to get my chart read, and he was the big name. He was looking at my moon, which is ruler of the ascendant, in the 12th house, and for an hour and a half or so, he told me how fucked up I am.
Welcome back to another Backstage Astrology episode. My name is Maria Medina, and today I'm so excited to be here with Maurice Fernandez. Maurice, you have a very, very long, extended, there are many things to say about you, but first of all, how are you today?
I'm very good. Thank you. Just came back from travels, adjusting to time zones, but in in good spirit and full of inspiration.
Thank you so much for being here, and really, it's a big honor. I follow your work for some years right now, and it was just funny to find out you also lived here in Israel. So, can you tell us what brought you here, or what's the connection?
My parents, I was born in Africa
Aha.
and I lived there for until I was a teenager. And then my family moved to Israel. And that's where I first got in touch with astrology, really. I mean, in a more serious way, because I was always interested, even as a young child. So, yeah, there's something about Israel that is very unique. And of course, people are very polarized today. But if we just look at the geography, how it is the gate between Africa, Asia, Europe, it's always been a very powerful place. And it's no wonder, I mean, maybe it is a wonder that there's a lot of fighting because it's such a powerful place. There's no oil there. There's no diamonds. You wonder why it is so precious. So there's some kind of spiritual force that I feel is there and creates both wonder and tension. But I feel like it definitely was, a place where East and West were meeting. Many people coming from Iraq, Iran, and then from Europe, from North Africa. So there's a very rich culture, and I think very deep astrology was actually there. So I was really introduced to good teachers that eventually led me to get involved with evolutionary astrology, which is the the orientation that I follow today.
What a story. Well, for those who don't know Maurice Fernandez, he's an internationally respected evolutionary astrologer, author, teacher with more than 3 decades of experience, right? Am I saying it right, Maurice? You've been everywhere. You're teaching. You also served as a president of OPA, which is the Organization of Professional Astrologers, if I'm not mistaken, right? Um,
Astrology, professional
Astrology.
astrology.
So probably you already know him. He is also an author. He has a really, really long CV. You can go to his website and read it because I don't want to bore you. I want to get to know Maurice. Maurice, what was happening when astrology found you? Or when did you start getting interested in astrology, really?
Yeah, on my nodal return, really, that's when I took steps to take a class that was more thorough. So I was always interested as a child. My mother had sunshine astrology for children
What?
books. And as a Scorpio, I felt like this book really got me. It understood me better than my parents and my friends and whatnot. So I understood this kind of I don't know, on the one hand, intensity and fascination with death and all kinds of things that are taboo because, we don't talk about death with a kid and I was fascinated by that. So, that book was my little Bible.
Wow.
But then, I forgot about it, was a teenager, did my crazy things, and I met a friend who was also very much into astrology. So we started talking about it and then joined a class. And then one of the things that happened during my nodal return, I was about 18. And it's interesting, my nodes are in Leo, Aquarius. So this was kind of I do see, Aquarius representing the stars.
Uh-huh.
So that was, a deeper initiation that then unfolded to a professional practice.
And that happened in South Africa or here in Israel?
Not South Africa. I was in Central Africa.
Central
I was
Africa.
born in a place called Burundi.
Ah, Burundi. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Um, it's landlocked and nobody, not many people know about it. But I don't know, I was, as a kid, I was in Burundi. When I was 18, I was already in Israel.
So yeah, you were growing up across different cultures. So how did that shape the astrologer you eventually became?
Oh, I loved what I was studying, and I was telling everyone I'm studying astrology. And so people started asking me for readings because I was very enthusiastic and open about it. And like I said, there was a lot of curiosity. And so that got me started. I was at the time more involved, with artistic studies. I was into sound engineering and working in studios. Um, but doing, occasional readings on the side. And then I think one of the important milestones is that a lady who interestingly um, had her sun on my ascendant and her moon on my sun and her moon and her ascendant on my moon. I mean, to the degree like we had all these ascendant, sun, moon changeable, different signs, but correlating to one another. She told me, "You teach me astrology." And of course I was, you know, not very seasoned. So at first I told her to find somebody else. But she told me, because I was speaking French
Hmm.
and she was French, she told me that she couldn't find somebody else. It had to be me. And so I kind of jumped in the water, and the rest is history. So I did more and more readings. I started teaching classes, and everybody, you know, was intrigued. But from a professional standpoint, it was not something anyone would consider to be financially sustainable
Right.
where I could make a living. So I got that whole thing about it's not a job. What are you doing? But I just went with it. And it was so deep, it was so transformative. I will say, looking back, that it saved me from being lost.
Oh.
Because even though, I had other interests, um, having that spiritual foundation finally made sense. Just like as a kid, that I could find refuge in a deeper understanding of myself.
Hmm.
Finding astrology, even as an adult, kind of put everything in place. I was not, I found the confidence, that by the very fact that people told me it's not a job and I knew it's what I'm supposed to do. Um, it basically empowered me. So
Oh, that's beautiful. Also, you were mentioning that, your mom or your parents were buying these song sign books. So your parents were into the spiritual world, or how was the thing with your parents and the whole astrology idea?
no, they were not. I mean, they were not opposed to it. They never told me, anything against it. And they encourage my freedom and my exploration, but they were not interested in studying, or they were not spiritually inclined. They were, just family people, really not artistic particularly and
Mm.
not spiritual particularly. My father was a very practical person. My mother was, mostly concerned about family, very um, traditional in that
Mhm.
sense.
And do you have brothers or sisters? Were you sharing this astrology knowledge with them? What did they say?
I have a brother who's much more scientific.
Uh-huh.
My sister was more interested initially. And, really, all my family, they asked for readings. They wanted to know. They were asking me what's going on in the stars. Why are they, when is it a good time? Am I supposed to feel, all this kind of thing. So mostly superficial.
Mm.
They didn't. go deep into the study, but they were again not opposed to it. And I think that helped me, not having to face too much resistance.
That's beautiful. So, was there like an author or a book that caught your attention that you said, okay, this is worth spending some energy and time? And if so, which book and which author or teacher?
Yeah, I mean, my main teacher was Jeffrey Green.
Aha.
Um, when I was introduced to him by my teacher in Israel,
Mhm.
and she used to travel to the United States to conferences, and I was definitely intrigued. And then I went to the United States in 93
Mhm.
for other purposes, for my artistic purposes. And I went through a deep, deep transformation there, a deep spiritual experience. That started with a crisis
Mm.
in a very typical scorpionic way. I kind of lost everything I went for. Um, and I was in New York City, it was a thick of a very, very bitter winter, very isolated. And I started to to do Kundalini yoga.
Ah.
And I had nothing else, so I did that all the time. Um, and that led to some kind of jolt, some kind of a epiphany and physical transformation. It's like, when you look at cartoons and you see, the nerdy boy turning into Spider-Man, it was kind of this transformation that the yoga was so powerful that it literally made me want to fly off buildings. The energy was so strong that I couldn't be in my body. And that opened a lot of channels, spiritual channels, and of course astrology was in the thick of that. So that's when I physically went to meet Jeff Green,
Wow.
who was in Seattle. I was already corresponding with him. We were in touch, at the time through letters. But I went to Norwalk conference
Uh-huh.
and I met him physically, and it was that kind of moment when, you know, time out of time kind of experience,
Uh-huh.
feeling of very deep and long recognition. And and then, it became very, very, very clear that nothing else matters, that this is my spiritual path, and I had no more distractions, so to
Wow.
speak. Um, yeah, everything was crystal clear. I had immense willpower. Um, it's almost like things opened up, like the seas were parting. So, that's basically when I became really full-time astrologer. And I continued to study with him for several years. And I started initially to teach his class.
Mm.
Um, I went back to Israel for a few years and I brought, his program there. I invited him to Israel. He came to lecture, and I invited another astrologer, international Noel Till. Um, so these were, new developments in the country
Oh,
because it wasn't done before. And then gradually, as I went through my own spiritual progress, I started to write about Neptune. Why about Neptune?
yes.
No idea.
Ah.
Um, this is part of this Kundalini experience and these channeling that happened. Um, it happened very spontaneously and unexpectedly. So I ended up writing, and writing things that I had no idea what they were until um, that's what prompted me to return to the United States in order to publish this. It became a book basically.
Mhm.
But, English wasn't my first language. And even though I studied English hard because I was studying astrology in English, writing is a whole different story. So I first published the book, it took about 4 years from the time I wrote it to the time it came out in 2004. But I was not pleased with the way it was done
Mm.
because, as I said, it needed more editing. I needed more help, and I didn't have that help. So, but I was glad the book was out because I needed to organize this knowledge. It needed to it needed to have its own stamp. And it took another 14 years to publish the second edition.
Mhm.
That is the book that most people know today. It was published again in 2018.
Mhm. So the book has been
So,
around for a while.
yeah, it's been around and it came in very surprising ways. And again, something that was both a blessing and a difficult path because as many people within the astrology community, you know, often come against modern astrologers because they say, oh, you're making things up.
Mhm. Mhm.
You cannot trace this knowledge to ancient, traditional Hellenistic,
Mm.
whatever source. And that's true. I cannot trace it. But modern astrology is also very ancient because a lot of the spiritual concepts were imported from Eastern traditions that survived, the Age of Enlightenment, the scientific revolution that rejected spirituality. And, if you go back to Greece and Hellenistic time, the soul, Plato is all
Mhm.
about the soul and evolution. And so evolutionary astrology is nothing modern. It's just a modern, in a way, um, in the field of astrology, but it's really based on timeless wisdom. And I wonder if there were no evolutionary astrologer back in the days as well. It's just that we don't have any trace of writings, but a lot of the knowledge of ancient tradition was oral knowledge. It
Mhm.
wasn't written knowledge always. So, to only rely on what we recovered, literature that we recovered, I think is very partial. And of course, the 20th century saw people like Carl Jung,
Hmm.
who were involved with astrology, people like Dane Rudyard,
Hmm.
who were big thinkers. They were not just astrologers, but they were philosophers and, of course, psychoanalysts. So this transformed the field of astrology and um, and turned it into a practice, an approach that is more growth oriented than just an external analysis of external events, as if, you know, we don't have a way to consciously um, navigate our lives. So it's the whole debate about free will, fate,
Hmm.
and how they work together. And what I
Wow.
wanted to, my bottom line is that speaking about the Neptune book,
Hmm.
I don't have quotes, and references. Like, where did you take that from? And who did, it's something that was started from a very clean slate. And that's why it it's both, those who read it are often really inspired by it, but then others are very critical of it because it's coming out of nowhere.
Hmm. I can see. Do you have a like specific Neptune position in your chart? Is it?
Well, at the time that I was writing it, Neptune was on my North Node.
Uh-huh.
Um, I mean, writing and publishing, those early 2000, Neptune was early Aquarius. It was on my North Node, then it squared my Sun. Um, so there was that. When I first got this kind of writing download, Jupiter was in my 12th house. So I associate from an archetypal point of view, Neptune, Pisces, and 12th house.
Uh-huh.
Again, this is something that some astrologers look at it suspiciously, but it's just, for me, it's working. It is reflected in many years of practice and research. So having 12th house activations, has a Neptunian energy to it. So that Jupiter in the 12th in Gemini was part of this happening.
Oh wow. Okay, yeah, that can be powerful, I think, with Gemini and Neptune. But Maurice, do you want to share with us your sun sign, your moon, your rising sign so people, get the vibe more?
Well, Scorpio sun, um, and Cancer rising
Mm.
with the moon in Gemini in the 12th house.
In the 12th house. How have you lived that moon in the 12th house? Because the 12th house is often, I don't know, everyone has a different version of it. But for you, how was your personal experience as a Gemini moon in the 12th house? Is it challenging or?
Well, I think that it captures to some extent what I went through
Mhm.
in the sense that um, having a Gemini moon in the 12th, there was a lot of multicultural exposure. Even in Africa, it was a melting pot. You had a lot of expats from Europe, you had a lot of Asian from India and Pakistan and a lot of local African and so we were constantly in this kind of Gemini melting pot. And moving to Israel, even though, it was completely different context, there was again a lot of that mixture of different cultures, different systems. And that in the 12th house way made my feeling of living something very universal. I never was attached to a nation. I'm this nationality, I have that passport. It doesn't mean much to me except that it helped me travel when I have to pass immigration. But that Gemini moon in the 12th is really feeling like this kind of universal identity. Um and yeah, it was not difficult in that sense. The moment, when people initially, were trying to pigeonhole me or tell me, so who are you and where do you belong and why are you making friends with these foreigners? Um, that's when I got confused because to me that was natural. Like, what are you talking about? It's not a problem to me, it's a problem to you. But as a young child, I I I had to doubt myself first. Like, is there something wrong with me? Is there something wrong that I am not, into soccer and football?
Hmm.
That this doesn't interest me, but I like to grow plants and save animals. So I was a little bit different. And that's why spirituality helped me because as I was introduced to the yoga and to astrology, my moon was very happy. I felt at home.
Right.
So I didn't have, terrible trauma or I didn't have difficult family experiences except for the, kind of normal things that most people go through.
Mhm.
But I want to share something that later I understood may have also been part of this kind of fate
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
writing a book about the 12th house and about
Mhm.
Neptune. When I was in Israel and in my early studies, I went to an astrologer's to get my chart read, and he was the big name. He was very popular. He was the only one who was publishing locally, news kind of reports and booklets. And so, back in the day, again, no internet. So
Mhm.
anything written, anything that was available was like gold. And so I scheduled this reading and, for about an hour and a half, he was looking at my moon, which is ruler of the ascendant in the 12th house. And for an hour and a half or so, he told me how fucked up I am, how I was sabotaging myself. And I'm a like what, 19, 20-year old, just about to start my life. So this guy, was going by some very outdated idea that the 12th house is some kind of prison. And that's his reading. And so, when I came out of that reading, I felt very empty. Luckily, it didn't discourage me to continue. Um, I knew that he was not a good astrologer. From then on, I kind of broke a lot of myth about famous astrologers because um, he didn't know how to read a chart. So, I forgot about it. I kind of moved on and went to continue my studies. But then, I ended up writing about the 12th house
Mhm.
and not, it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to show him. it was completely unrelated. But at the same time, I can see how something in the ether was in motion to kind of bring a new understanding about the 12th house because it's so brutalized. It is so badly interpreted in most astrology books. It is scary and it's hurting astrology. So I think my experience is not unique. I think many people who have strong 12th house energy end up having bad readings because there's not enough about it.
Well, I have to say, that's part of, how I got to know your work because I have two planets in the 12th house. And the first thing I heard was doom and gloom
Yeah,
and I was like, oh no, like no way, there has to be something, and then that's how I know about you and obviously your work and the book and everything. So thanks for that. It's been really useful to all of us. So I
thank you.
think it's a
Thank you.
great job. But tell us more, when you started doing your first readings, probably first to family and friends, but then probably you realized you had to charge some money, or, maybe you could. How was that process of understanding that you needed to charge people?
Um, I don't remember the exact process,
Hmm.
but I never had a problem charging.
Hmm.
And it started with very modest
Hmm.
uh, contributions to a full charge because to me, again, so at the time it was more unconscious. Today, I am very clear about the fact that we live in a culture where people are either materialistic or spiritual. And for some reason, you cannot be both. So if you're spiritual, charging money, is not holy, it's not virtuous. And if you are materialistic, then you're supposed to be interested in spiritual things. So there's some kind of divorce that has happened between the physical world and the spiritual world. And this goes with every tradition on the planet where people who are Buddhist or Christian or, Muslims or Jews, if they follow a spiritual path, they cannot be attached to anything materialistic. It's seen as inferior, as an obstacle to spiritual realization. And that kind of gets into the head of many astrologers as well, who feel like they're offering a spiritual service, so it should be either free or, you know, based on contributions. And I think it's damaging, not only from a sustainable point of view of running a practice, but I think it's damaging as a philosophy to separate those worlds. So I think charging, to me, the same way that people ask me, are you not afraid of public speaking? Did you have any anxiety about being, in conferences and I realized that it's not really just about me. If I charge money, to me, it's about investing in astrology.
Hmm.
It's about supporting research. It's about making sure that there's financial backing to a very important system that helps humanity. So when I charge money, I understand that this money is going to support a body of knowledge. It's
Mm.
going to support many people's lives. And when I am on stage, it's not about me. It's about astrology.
That's
And
beautiful.
and yeah, and that's what it's about.
Well, you were taking these leadership roles, especially at OPA. What was the biggest shadow you had to confront in yourself or in the astrological community while taking leadership roles?
We do need to be careful, and we probably will face a deep crisis as a community, especially with Pluto being in Aquarius, where there's going to be some deep crisis shadow that's going to come and blow in our face, so to speak, and will force us as astrologers to get better organized, to bring more ethical guidelines. It's misused information. There were instances where astrology was used for abuse, to get sexual favors. It's a matter of time before there's a major lawsuit. There's going to be damage.